All right, guys, we have been doing a series, kind of wanting to explore a little bit of what kind of goes across people's minds when New Year comes. Because there are still lots of people that want to do the whole resolution thing, and that's great and wonderful. Um, but there's lots of us um, who come into the new year, and we can't help but wonder um, what's this year going to bring. And maybe we're anticipating good things, but let's face it, human nature, we tend to dwell on the negative a little bit. And so we find those negative things and we start to do something called worry, which is why we kind of dove into this whole mess of dealing with today's worries and try to bring things out and explore some bigger things than just, oh, hey, I'm wondering if, I'm going to be able to pay all my bills next week or whatever. Although that's part of it for sure. But just what's going on in the United States of America and globally that is causing us some measure of anxiety and trying to do things in a more broad stroke fashion than just giving you, hey, here's 3 tips for financial success in 2024 or something like that. Although that's definitely valuable. Um, that's not really where I felt like God was wanting us to go. Um, because there is a lot to worry about, more than just money. I mean, yes, the economy's not in great shape. I'm reminded about that every time I go to the grocery store. Um, it just is amazing how much more things cost than they did before COVID hit, or even honestly during COVID. There's a lot of things. There's a couple exceptions. Lumber's back down. You guys remember all those memes you saw back during COVID, and probably lumber going by and somebody saying, "Hey, you need to flaunt your wealth" or something like that. But anyway, point is that we do have uncertainties, and if the United States economy is not enough, we're about to have probably 2 candidates yelling at each other um, and yelling at us on why we should not vote for the other person. Um, and we get to go through that for the next several months. Uh, and so we don't know what things are going to be like this time next year. We might have a different president. We might. Well, let's hope so. Um, and we don't know for sure what that's going to hold. Might be Biden again, and we might have 4 more years of what we've had for the last 4 years. Yeah, it might be Trump again. We might have a repeat of the previous 4 years. Might be someone different. We just there's no guarantees in life, and so there's that. There's in case you haven't heard, there's like a war going on in Iraq. Not Iraq, sorry, Ukraine. Wow, wow, that's a little dated information. Uh, Uh, yeah, Ukraine is the hotbed, but that's not the only hotbed, because we have Israel and the whole Gaza Strip conflict. And I mean, I remember um, like 2 weeks after the whole Israeli Hamas war broke out, I had a friend telling me that basically that Hamas is allied with, let's see if I can get the chain right, with Syria. Syria is allied with Russia. Russia is building ties with China. Um, and so they said, and of course, the United States, we're like pumping money and ammunition and medical supplies into Israel, like in Ukraine, fast as we can. And so he basically said the stage is set for World War III. And I'm like, that's a little more compelling than I'm comfortable with. I mean, it's all there. So we have all this big stuff to worry about. But let's face it, I mean, aside from like when you're watching the news, how often do you think about Ukraine or Israel through the day? Maybe you do. I don't know. Maybe you're one of those people that says pray for Israel. And it's like something you're doing all the time, and that's wonderful. That's good. But most of us have enough stuff on our plates normally. Um, and so, really, I kind of wanted to get into this whole idea of just fear and anxiety on today. It's just fear and anxiety because that's what hits us. Because whether we're dealing with finances and whether we're going to make bills pay or whether we're worried about something cataclysmic like World War III and maybe God, my mouth is not working today. Global thermonuclear war. There we go. I got all those words out. Maybe not in the right order, but I got them all out. Um, but anyway, so whether you're, just worried about the daily stuff or whether you're worried about the big stuff, point is that there's worries. And if I know most of you guys in here, to some degree, there's a little bit of both. Probably a lot of the daily stuff, but when someone starts talking about, bigger events going on worldwide, maybe you do start to worry a little bit. And I'm just reminded of what Franklin D. Roosevelt said. It was in his inaugural address in 1933 during the Great Depression. And so he's trying to put people's worries at ease. He said a quote that's become possibly the most famous presidential quote, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. And I love that quote. I think it's very true. But that's not how we feel about things. Because we get lost on something we're scared of. I looked it up. Approximately, according to statistics, approximately one person in eight, so 12.5% of Americans, are going to experience a phobia at some point in their life. Maybe they'll wrestle it down and conquer it, maybe they won't. But it says that 9.1% of adults have phobias. They just got it. Maybe it's one, maybe it's 801, I don't know. But I mean, that's it, 9.1%. So basically one person in 10. And just to help split that up and make things a little interesting, 12.2% of women have phobias and 5.8% of men, apparently. Not my statistics, I didn't make them up. And while phobias are, for some people, they're crippling, depending on what it is. Other people, it's not so much. But again, I want to bring things back into our world, everyday life here in Texas. And so I wanted to mainly focus on this idea of anxieties. And I found a statistic that said 19.1% of Americans have an anxiety disorder. 1 in 5. Wow. I think it's getting worse. I found a statistic for 2023, and it said that basically 37% of people are more worried about what 2023 would bring than they were about 2022. Here we are a year later, and again, the economy's not in great condition, and we have now another war that's globally affecting things, and so we're just worried. I mean, that's just the simple truth of it, is that we are. Matter of fact, it's such a common thing to have anxiety. My dog has anxiety problems. Right now, she is down there inside the house, and she is wishing, as hard as she knows how, that she could be up here. And we have to do things like, we have this little miniature pew bench thing in the house, and we have to scoot that in front of the front door because she can open the front door. and get out. Can't leave food on any counter surface because she will tear into it. You go after it, and you will find stuff, usually in Caleb's room, sometimes Tanya's office, occasionally Joshua's room. But point is, she will just tear it up, go after it. And it's not even just like the countertops, it's like the sink. If they're like, we get some meat out the thaw and we put it inside the sink, nice recessed surface where she can't really get up. Well, she can. Um, so she's gotten out stuff that we were planning for dinner, and we come home and we find that ground beef or whatever is gone. And so lots of things like that. She can open up the door into the garage. We have to lock that. But you can't just lock the doorknob because she can sometimes, not every time, but she can get that little doorknob wiggled right and unlock the doorknob. So you got to do the deadbolt. This is the anxiety that my dog goes through. How much worse is it for people? We have some drugs for it to help, but ask anyone who's on a drug for some anxiety disorder, and they're going to tell you it's not a cure. We don't have a cure for anxiety. Modern medicine doesn't have it. Modern psychology can try to help you work through it, and that'll help. But there's no cure. There's no switch you can flip on a person. No surgery that can be performed. We don't have that. But God does. God does have a switch. Now, it's not an easy process. There's sometimes that God, we can go to God and we can surrender whatever it is we're worried about, whatever fear we have, phobia or wars or whatever you're worked up over. We can go to God and we can hand that over. And sometimes we genuinely, fully, wholeheartedly hand it over, and we're content to let Him keep it. But I'm going to be honest with you, that's not most of the time. Certainly not most people. From what I've heard from you guys, from what I've seen in my life, from what I've heard from other people, family, friends, usually what happens is we go to God and we say, okay, God, I'm really worried about making my bills this week, so I'm just going to trust you to provide. So please, Lord, I'm asking for your provision this week. And then we walk away, and it's like we went up to God and we handed Him this whole bundle of worries. And we said, okay, God, it's yours. And then we said, okay, amen. Now let me have those back. And then we walk right back out of the throne room with them. And that's normal. And so usually it's a process of going through that act again and again and again. And I've just found repetition to be what works the best. And that ain't glamorous. That is not fun, but it's real. It's honest. For most of us, it's going to be a process of surrendering stuff like that. But I want to take a look at a couple places where Jesus addresses these things. So let's turn to John chapter 14, shall we? John chapter 14. All right, so John 14, we're going to look verses 1 and 2. Jesus is trying to set our fears at ease about the future here. He says, don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. There's more than enough room in my Father's house. If this were not so, I would have told you. Would I have told you that I am going to prepare a place for you? And so you stop and you think about it. That's what worries are about, ultimately. It's about the future. And part of what Jesus is saying here is that you're worried about tomorrow. You're worried about next week. And we go to God, and we basically, maybe you do even say this, but we basically go to God and say, look, I'm looking for a 5-year plan. Okay? What's going to happen over the next 5 years or 10 years so I can plan accordingly and I can control my life, or at least feel like I got some control over it. And Jesus, in part, he's telling us, look, you guys are worried about all the stuff that's just short term. Because the financial problems you have now aren't the problems that you had 10 years ago. I realize there's a couple of people here that didn't have many worries 10 years ago. But still, for most of us, we had something that we would get worked up over. And it's probably entirely different than what we get worked up over today. And you know what? 10 years from now, Lord willing, we're around at that point. 10 years from now, we're not going to be worried about the same things that we are today. And so Jesus is trying to call into our minds this idea of eternity. That's why he's saying, you know, I'm going to heaven. I'm going to prepare a place for you. As a believer, it's comforting to know that we've got a spot. Not only is it, it's not like, oh, hey, I'm just gonna, hey, do something real quick and you can make do. You know, it's kind of, you slid in just barely, and okay, you can have a spot in the corner, you know. And Jesus doesn't work like that. He's like, I know exactly who's coming. I know when you're getting here, and I'm getting things ready for you. Yeah, this place will be fully prepared for you. So, yesterday the ladies had a what I call a Jesus journaling type class, and there's a lady that Tanya had met at a conference, and they just really hit it off, and they worked this thing out to where this lady named Rhonda would come out and do this, and when she did, one of the things that Tanya did for her was she prepared a gift basket, and she and Wendy did a lot of things to get things ready for this lady's one night stay here. How much more do you think that God's getting things ready for us? We worry about temporary things, and it's just not helpful. I want to go back to the book of Matthew. Well, in Matthew, he kind of talks about this. So, Matthew chapter 6. I feel like he addresses this far more thoroughly than he did in what we just read in John. So, let's see. Matthew chapter 6. And this is a lengthy chunk of scripture, but it all has importance to what we're talking about. So, let's start in Matthew chapter 16. Sorry, 6. And in verse 19, like I said, my mouth is not working today well. All right. Starts off with, don't store up treasures here on earth, where moths eat them and rust destroys them, where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven, where moths cannot destroy. Thieves do not break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also. Your eye is a lamp that provides light for your whole body. And when your eye is good, your whole body is filled with light. But when the eye is bad, your whole body is filled with darkness. And if the light you think you have is actually darkness, deep that darkness is. No one can serve two masters. For you will hate one and love the other. You will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. That is why I tell you not to worry about everyday life, whether you have enough food and drink or enough clothes to wear. Isn't life more than food and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns, for your heavenly Father feeds them. Aren't you far more valuable to him than they are? Can all your worries add a single moment to your life? And why worry about your clothing? Look at the lilies of the field and how they grow. They don't work or make their clothing, yet Solomon in all his glory was not dressed as beautifully as they are. And if God cares so wonderfully for wildflowers that are here today and thrown into the fire tomorrow, he will certainly care for you. Why do you have so little faith? Don't worry about these things, saying, what will we eat? What will we drink? What will we wear? These things dominate the thoughts of unbelievers. But your heavenly Father already knows your needs. Seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and He will give you everything you need. So don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today, trouble is enough for today. It's such a powerful passage. It really is. I just love it. And this idea he starts off with that we don't need to worry about trying to store up for today. I'm not saying don't put something in your savings account. So don't get me wrong. What I'm talking about here is basically it comes down to what he said: where your treasure is, your heart is. So if you're thinking about money, if you're worrying about money nonstop, guess where your heart is? It's not with God. And so what he's asking you to do is stop and change your focus. Because it really is, it's all about him. He is the great provider. And he basically just goes from that and goes in this whole thing about you can't have two masters. God and money. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't. So the question then becomes, who are you going to trust? Are you going to trust God, or are you going to trust the thing we call money? And it's hard because we see money solve problems. The bill collector stops calling when we give them money. But you know what? They're going to come back. That bill's going to come up again next month. Your electric bill. You may have a different amount, but you got one to pay next week or next month too. It, it's just the way it works. And so we can continually focus on these things every day and just constantly be in fear over whether these things are going to happen, or we can stop worrying. And we can look to the one who really is our master, who has control of it all. The Bible says that he owns cattle on 1,000 hills. So just imagine 8,000 hills, and it's just covered with cows. How rich is the person who owns that? I'd probably be pretty satisfied with my wealth if I had one hill with a few cows on it. It just, it doesn't make sense. No, but this is what we do. We're just, and worry is just the Munchkin version of fear. It's more or less the same thing. It's us, in a sense, saying, God, I don't trust you. And so, man, I know it's hard. I'm not a big worry wart, um, but that's not to say that I don't worry. Money's tight for my family too right now, and so I have to remind myself to trust God and letting Him lead me day by day. And so we see things like that, and he just, again, he's just telling us, verse 25 says, that's why I tell you, don't worry about anything in life. He's just asking us to trust him. And so this whole problem of fear, it just keeps coming back down to where our heart is. What are we worried about? Because worry is fear. It's just the unknown. Remember what gosh, Roosevelt said, there's nothing to fear but fear himself. And so we don't need to fear that because we have God. If God is for us, who can be against us? We can trust him. He's proven himself time and time and time again. And not just in your lifetime, but in the lives of all those who went before us. We have 2,000 years worth of church history, and we can go back and we can look at how God has provided time and time again over countless years. Just we don't need to worry. We don't. We just need to keep going to God and say, okay, here it is again, bringing it to you. So please take this thing I'm worried about and just I'm going to trust your provision. And then when we find ourselves worrying about it again, we stop ourselves and say, okay, God, sorry, I took it back. Here it is again. It's yours again. And you just keep doing it. I'm not saying that we don't need to get out there. You know, we're Americans. We have a hustle mentality. And there's some truth in that for sure. But ultimately, even the ability to hustle is a gift from God. It's God's provision. You know, our cells wouldn't be able to utilize the energy that we take in through food if He didn't make it that way. Every skill we have, every ability to make a decision, all of that, still, it's a gift from Him. It's one of the ways He provides. Probably the main way, but it's not the only way. There is one thing you're supposed to be in fear of. I want to take you to Proverbs 9:10 and show you that. But even that, I think, has a caveat. So, Proverbs, not Ecclesiastes, Ross. Proverbs 9, verse 10. It says, fear of the Lord is the foundation of wisdom. Knowledge of the Holy One results in good judgment. And I see that. And I've been told my whole life that when you see that phrase, the fear of the Lord, that basically what it really means is the word respect. That we're supposed to respect God. And I'll say that from what I've seen, there's a measure of truth in that. But I did a word study on this years ago. In the word, like in the New Testament, when it uses that phrase, fear of the Lord, it uses the same word we get the word phobia from. There's some genuine fear, I think, that needs to be mixed in there. But the question is, because that's not the only place that the Bible talks about fear. I want to look now to 1 John. I want to bring up a little bit of what is easily taken as a contradiction, but it's not. 1 John chapter 4, verse 18. Says, such love has no fear, because perfect love expels all fear. If we're afraid, it is for fear of punishment, and this shows that we have not fully experienced His perfect love. So, you can look at those two verses we just talked about and say, okay, I'm supposed to fear God. But then on the other hand, perfect love that God has for us drives out fear. So which is it? Am I supposed to fear God or am I supposed to not fear God? This is one of those times that you've got to use the overall message that the Bible tells us time and time again in order to help sort things out. This is where reading the Gospels comes in so good. Or reading the letters that we see in the Bible, where Paul wrote to some church or another. We see time and time again that this idea that we're called, after all, first and most important commandment Jesus said was to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, strength, right? It wasn't to fear the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, strength. So, how do we resolve this idea of fearing God with the idea of perfect love casts out fear. Well, I had to get a little help on that. Basically, what I found that makes the most sense to me is this idea that maybe it's best summed up in that in emphasizing that word perfect love casts out fear. Now, we already know that God loves us perfectly. I mean, that whole sent Jesus to die for us thing. You guys remember that part? He loves us perfect. Question is, how well do we love him? And that's where the imperfection tends to come in. And so basically what I read is that the idea of fear of the Lord is basically kind of the starting point. When we come to God, we basically come and we have a basic understanding of the gospel, right? Faith. Faith in who Jesus is, that he came, that he is God in human flesh, that he came down, he died for us, and rose again so that we could spend eternity with him. And if we just believe in him, we can experience that too. And so we start with this idea of faith, but part of the taking it on faith is trusting the simple fact that God's good. Because we don't have a great track record yet. We're new in the faith, right? We don't have experience of God delivering us from X, Y, and Z. We have to stop and we have to take that on faith. And so a little bit of what's going to drive us is this fear, the basic idea that yes, God is good. We have faith in that, but we have that fear, that understanding that God is all powerful. He's capable of, he has the power to do anything he wants to do. But as we get to know God, as we get to experience life with him, we start to see that he's not some big cop in the sky who's just waiting, he's kind of squishes like an ant. And I've met probably hundreds of people through my life who have that idea of God, that he is some mean dad who's just waiting to punish us. And what we find is this thing called grace. This thing that we sang about, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. And we just see that despite the punishment that we earn over and over again every time we mess things up, we have a God who's saying, you get grace, you get grace, you get grace. Every time you screw up, you get grace. And there's times he tells us that, there's discipline that comes, like a father disciplines their child. But the whole point of that discipline isn't punishment. It's help us course correct. We don't punish our, at least if you're a good parent anyway, you don't punish your kids just to be mean. You punish the kids so that they'll understand not to repeat mistakes. We don't punish a kid before they do a mistake. God does the same sort of thing. He's just trying to help us do course corrections. And as we get to experience God more and more and more, we find ourselves getting more secure in that love that he has for us. And the fear slowly but surely starts to go away. We find that he's totally trustworthy. He's totally good. And we can not only say that because the Bible tells me so, we can say that because 5 years ago, Jesus saved my rear end. We can say that because 4 years ago, he did the same thing again. And you just start to build up this history, this experience, and the trust. And you see how good, how gracious he is. And how, yes, his truths sometimes are hard, but he comes at us with grace. He helps us to learn those truths, accept those truths, and live those truths. He's so good. Part of his goodness is he's trying to tell us, hey, look, stop worrying about the things that are about what 30 days in existence, or maybe 5 years in existence, or something like that. I don't know. Different problems have different shelf life, but the point is they have shelf life. They don't go with us forever. That's God. He goes with us forever. He walks with us forever. He's there every step of the way. He's always more than happy to be willing to pull us out of the fire if we're just going to be willing to trust him. So we can kind of come at this idea that perfect love casts out fear. And if God perfects us, you and me, as he does his work in us, as we get that history, we start to really understand how good he is, how gracious he is. And we don't feel like we need to worry anymore. This is why so much of the Old Testament is God coming back and telling people of Israel, do you remember how I delivered your ancestors from Egypt? Do you remember how I took care of Abraham? Do you remember how I took care of all these people in the Bible? And he's telling us again and again. And we've got that history. And then we get this personal history built up. And it does the same thing. Except now it's something written in our hearts. It's not so much written in the Bible. It's not a history record. It's just our lives. So when it comes to fear, we don't have to, because we can go to God about those things. We can trust him with it, and he fights for us.